In this week's parasha, Parashat Vayelech, Be'ezrat Hashem, I want to take us on a journey. In this Dvar Torah, I want to take us on a journey into Moshe Rabbeinu's final journey in Olam Haze, in this world. Before he took his ultimate journey up into Olam Haba, we have this week's parasha, which is beginning the final day of Moshe Rabbeinu's life. And Be'ezrat Hashem, I think looking a little deeper in what's taking place will give us some insights into our Avodah on Yom Kippur, into Teshuvah, and into the bigger picture of how to grasp HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or try to get a little bit closer to the holiness up above. So, B'ezrat Hashem, I sent out 3 other recordings, 3 parts to this Dvar Torah. I realized that it got way too long. So in this Dvar Torah, I actually want to cut it down to an abridged main point of the Dvar Torah. So for those that have more time and want to go through a lot of sources and a lot of other opinions, I highly recommend the other 2 parts, especially part two, where we really go into the details behind the machlokot that make up what we're going to try to say over here. Okay, but let's look at our parasha. The parasha says, Vayelech Moshe, and Moshe goes, and Moshe went, Vaydaber et hadabrim ha'ele el kol Yisrael, and Moshe spoke these words to all of Yisrael. Vayomer alehem, Moshe tells them, today, I'm 120 years old. This is the last day of Moshe Rabbeinu's life. And I can no longer, I'm not active anymore. I can't come and I can't go anymore. And Hashem told me, I can't cross over this Jordan River. My journey stops right now. So, our parasha is beginning with the last day of Moshe Rabbeinu's life, and Chazal are bothered by this first word, Vayelech. Where is he going? What do you mean Vayelech? Everywhere else it says Vaydaber Moshe, but by us, Vayelech Moshe, Vaydaber Tadvarim Ha'ele. Just say Vaydaber Moshe. Where is he going to? What's going on over here? What's this concept of Vayelech? What is this halicha? From the flow of the Pesukim, it appears that Moshe Rabbeinu is coming to say his final goodbye, as he's appointing Yoshua in a couple of Pesukim, Chazak ve'ematz. We have the next leader of the Jewish people. So Moshe Rabbeinu is coming to say goodbye, but it doesn't appear that he wants to say goodbye because he wants to say goodbye. Rather, this seems to be the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says Rashi, what does it mean when Moshe says, Lo uchal od latzet velavo? What does it mean that he said, I can't come and go anymore? What does that mean? So, Yachol shetashash kocho? Could it be that Moshe Rabbeinu became weak? Tashash kocho? Talmud Lomar, Lo chataino velo nas lecho. But we're going to read at the end of the Torah, it's going to tell us Moshe Rabbeinu, his eyes never became dim, and his vigor was never lost. Ela ma'u lo uchal. So what does it mean that when he says vayas, he's telling us lo uchal, I can't come and go anymore? He's saying eini rashai, I'm not allowed. Shenitla mimeni harashut v'nitla Yoshua. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu took away my permission, I have to go. It's now time for Yoshua. Okay, davar acher, another approach. Latzet velavo b'divrei Torah. He's saying, I can't come with Torah anymore. Melamed shnistamu mimenu masorot umayanot hachochma. We learn that HaKadosh Baruch Hu now had closed up his ability to learn. He no longer has those well springs of Torah. That's been stopped from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He no longer has those traditions anymore. So meaning, it's not that he wants to stop learning. It's not that he doesn't know. There's actually another midrash that says he still knew Torah. But Hashem is now stopping it up a bit. He can no longer, be teaching it anymore. He can't be spreading it anymore. Hashem is making a statement. Your Torah times have stopped because I need you to go to the next world. It's time for Yoshua to take over. And it says, Vashem emar elai, zeu perush lo uchal latzet velavo, says Rashi. When it says, God told me this, lifisha Hashem emar elai, it's God's will. Not that I want to stop. I still have the ratzon to keep going. But Hashem is telling me my story is over. Now, the Ramban and Nachmanides, he gives a sweet angle to this whole story. He contrasts this Vayelech to Nitzavim. Last week's parasha, Nitzavim, all the Jewish people came, and everyone, the men, the women, the children, they were standing in front of Moshe Rabbeinu. Now it says, Moshe Vayelech, this is what happened. After Moshe kept saying what he said in last week's parasha, all the musar, all that he taught us, then everybody went home. And then we're skipping a little. Now Torah is telling us, Moshe now is going to them. He's leaving the Levite camp to go to the Jewish people out of kavod to them. As if someone's saying goodbye to his friend and he's asking him permission. Even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu was saying, Moshe, your time is up. It's time for you to go. But still, Moshe Rabbeinu out of kavod is so beautiful. He come to him to say, guys, I'm leaving you guys. He's making his goodbye, giving them kavod. Now, the Targum Yonatan learned something interesting. It says, Vayelech, he says, Va'azal Moshe lemashkan Beit Ulpana. He was going to the Beit Ulpana. He's Vayelech to the yeshiva. He's going to go teach in the yeshiva right now, in the Ohel Moed. Says the Abir Yaakov B'Chatzer and his Pituchei Chotam. He says Moshe Rabbeinu corresponds to all of Klal Yisrael. So to speak, all the 600,000 souls, all the neshama of the Jewish people, they are in Moshe Rabbeinu. But he also says Moshe is all the Torah, all the Perushim of the Torah. He says there's 600,000 root divrei Torah, drashot, that come out of the Torah, one for every single soul. Everybody has their chidush. But he says the Jewish people now were upset, they were sad. Moshe is coming to menachem them, to console them. Don't worry, I know that I'm dying. And it appears as if Torah is going to be lost. Things are going to be forgotten. We're going to know that Otniel ben Kenaz is going to have to bring back some of the Torah. We feel like things are being, don't worry. The Torah that's inside of me, the Torah that I represent of all the Jewish people, it's not going to be lost. In the future generations, these chidushim are going to come about. Don't worry, the Torah is going to be there. And that's what he's doing, being menachem the people right now. Says of Moshe Vovson on our parasha, he writes that Chazal tell us on Moshe Rabbeinu's last day of his life, on this day, he writes 13 Torot. 13 Sifrei Torah is written by Moshe Rabbeinu. Why is he doing this? He's doing this to give strength, to give chiyut to the Torah, as the Torah is also a representation of the souls of the Jewish people. He starts with the Bet in Bereshit, the Bet symbolizing the loftiest of the generations, the Dor De'ah, the earliest souls of the Jewish people. And then he concludes with the last letters of the last parasha, our parshas we're in right now, which he says corresponds to the lower and the later souls, the tachtonim, the generations of the ikva de Meshicha. Now we know that the Jewish people, yes shishimi bo'ot Torah, Yisrael is yes shishimi bo'ot Torah, that every Jew corresponds to a letter of the Torah, to a chidush. Says Rav Wolfson, so too in every generation, and so too even in the later, lower generations of the ikva de Meshicha, there's a Torah there as well. Rashi sees in the very last pasuk of our Torah, Le'enei Kol Yisrael, that's a hint to Moshe Rabbeinu breaking the luchot, the shirat luchot. It's a hint to sin. It's a hint to choshech. Says Rav Wolfson, these last letters of the Torah are a hint to the last generations, and it symbolizes the Torah of the last generations, meaning the lowest generations that have forgotten so much Torah, where there's a shvirah, where there is sin, the broken luchot, the letters have flown away. That's the meaning, he says, of Vayelech. Moshe was up high at the end of the Torah. He wants to go to those lower generations. He wants to give chizuk to those letters of the Torah. So he needs to limit his effect. He has to limit his hashpa'ah. He has to limit his or. He has to do what's called tzimtzum. He has to hold himself back, contract himself, constrict himself. He has to metzamtzem himself a little bit so that those lower generations can handle the light that he wants to give them, to handle the light that he's putting into those letters. And that's Vayelech Moshe. He's leaving his lofty level, lowering himself for the sake of the lower generations. It's the tzaddik, he says, that's chasing after the reshaim to bring them back to the tshuva. He says there's a chiyuv of the tzaddikim to run after those reshaim and bring them back to tshuva. Moshe Rabbeinu was running after the last generations, and he's trying to bring them back. And that's what he says, what it means when it says that the well springs of chokhmah were closed up, meaning that the great light had to be held back for the sake of those lower generations. And he writes, that's the special koach that we have in these last 10 days of the year that lead up to Yom Kippur. We know there's a famous teaching of the Lubavitchers from the Alter Rebbe that in the month of Elul, the Melech Basadeh, the king comes out to us. Says Rav Wolfson, the same idea. HaKadosh Baruch was close to us in these 10 days. The 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, in a certain angle, are the beginning of the new year. They're also the end of the last year. They're the reconciliation of the sun and the moon. Hashem comes out to us. Hashem is now Karov. Hashem is bringing back the Reshaim. So to Moshe Rabbeinu at the end of our parasha's beginning, the end of the Torah, where he's mitzamtzem himself, he holds back his light in order for us to be able to see, to understand, to get that chiyut, to get that strength. In the Musaf of Rosh Hashanah, we said that Hashem came down to us, our Pelei Tohar, in these clouds of Tohar, meaning Hashem wants to bring his light down to us, so he does it through the clouds. But wait a second, how is it Tohar? How is it pure if there's clouds? The clouds block the light. So yeah, that's the idea. The light was too strong. The light was too great. So we need Moshe Rabbeinu, we need HaKadosh Baruch Hu to come down in clouds, so that way we can get the Torah, we can get the light only if it doesn't blind us. And that's why Hashem is filtering it down to us. So too Moshe Rabbeinu is filtering down the light so we can put that chiyut into the last words of the Torah that correspond to the lowest broken generations. Okay. Now, Lanutati, I was thinking that Ulai, maybe Moshe Rabbeinu's last journey is actually an echo of the story of Moshe Rabbeinu learning the Torah in the Beit Midrash of Rebbe Akiva. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu wants to connect to these furthest generations, but that requires a little bit of help. He needs the lessons that don't necessarily come as natural to him, but was very much the legacy of Rebbe Akiva, the pillar of the oral Torah, the Torah of the Baal Teshuvah, of the Bnei Gerim, the person who elevated himself to the Pardes, went in Beshalom, came out Beshalom. He died al Kiddush Hashem with such suffering, such Yisurin, but yet he was able to direct the crowns on those letters. That's the levels of the Shar Nun. Rebbe Akiva is the one who can go from the lowest, darkest point, and then at that point reveal the greatest lights. Go all the way up to that Shar Nun. Moshe Rabbeinu needs to go to Rebbe Akiva to learn how to bring that light into those final psukim, into those final words of the Torah. So let's look at that Gemara in Menachot. It's the Gemara in Menachot, Daf Kaf Tet Amud Bet. It tells the story. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. B'sha'a she'ala Moshe lamarom, when Moshe Rabbeinu went up to the Shamayim, the higher Rekiah, according to the Maharal, learns, Matzau la'akadosh baruch hu, she'yoshev v'kosher ketarim le'otiyot. He saw Hashem crowning the letters onto the Torah. He's writing those tagin, 3 on some letters, 1 on some other letters, the special crowns on the letters. Amar lefanav, Ribono shel olam, mima keva yadecha? Moshe Rabbeinu asks, Hashem, who's holding you back? Why do you need these ornaments? Why do you need these crowns? Who's ever going to understand those crowns? Amar lo Adam echad yesh atid leyot besof kama dorot. There's going to be a person after many, many dorot. Again, Moshe Rabbeinu wants to connect to the later dorot. He's going to have to go now way into the future, to the times of Rebbe Akiva. Akiva ben Yosef Shemo, shatid lidrosh al kol kotz vekotz tilin shel halachot. Yes, there is going to be somebody in the future who's going to be able to doresh these crowns of the letters. Now, I've said this in the past, but I really think it's even more true, and especially in this Gemara, that all of these Gemarot of Moshe Rabbeinu going up to get the Torah, they seem to be referring to the second Luchot. The Luchot that we spoke about is the Torah Sheba'al Peh. The crowns of the letters being crowning those on, tying those on, is a hint to the Torah Sheba'al Peh. It's the hint to the Torah of Rebbe Akiva. Rebbe Akiva is the oral Torah. It seems to be this is not first Luchot. This is second Luchot, and second Luchot comes after the Shvirah. If we want to get mystical for a second, the Mekubalim say that it's only after the Shvirah that the letters get tagin. The tagin can only be seen after the Shvirah, after the Nefilah, after the falling. It seems to be talking about the second Luchot. Also, we have to note again, the Gemara is going out of its way to tell us besof kama dorot. We're dealing with later generations, with different challenges, with different understandings. Moshe is going to learn the Torah of the future generations. But in these generations, there's a lot more choshech. And if you want to shine a light in the choshech, you got to filter it. You can't blind them. And we're going to learn how to do this now through Rebbe Akiva. And he says, Mi ma'akev al yadecha? Who's holding you back? Now we know me. Who? Mystery. That's a hint to the 50th gate of Binah, the one that was hidden away. It's a hint to the Binah, and the word me, it's Gematria again at 50. Moshe is wondering, is anybody capable? Yeah, there is capable. There's a Rebbe Akiva who's going to be able to understand this. And that's why his original question is, Lo b'shamayim, I'm bringing the Torah down to the people, so what do we need this for? But yeah, we need this for the people because there's going to be somebody in the lowest of the lowest generations, somebody who's going to be in the biggest darkness, and he's going to be in the times of the Romans who were murdering Jews, the lowest times of the Jewish people, the times of destruction, the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. But yeah, there's going to be somebody over there, and in that darkness, he's going to be able to doresh tilim on those crowns. Continues the Gemara. Amar lefanav, Moshe then asked God, show me this guy. Amar lo chazor le'achorecha. Hashem tells him, go back. We'll get back to Chazor Lech in a second. Halach v'yashav besof shmone shurot. He sat behind 8 rows. He's sitting in the 8th row in the yeshiva. It's symbolizing he's pretty far from Rebbe Akiva. At least at the beginning of this Gemara, he's not so close to Rebbe Akiva. There's another girsa that puts him back at the 18th row. We'll get back to that as well. He couldn't understand what's going on. Says the Gemara, Tashash kocho. He became weak, his strength waned as he thought that he didn't have enough Torah. His knowledge was deficient. I can't understand the Torah of Rebbe Akiva. Now it's interesting. In our parasha, Rashi tells us that at least on the physical level, and even on the Ratzon level, Moshe was never Tashash Kocho. He always wanted to be Rabbeinu. But Hashem was now holding back some of those Ma'anot Shel Torah. He's not fully understanding. If this Gemara is talking about Moshe Rabbeinu's last day, so right now he can't fully understand. Hashem is holding back some of the Torah. And that might be part of the way that he's going to be able to understand. He's going to be able to get to those Ketarim. When he got to Davar Echad, this one thing, we'll get to Davar Echad in a second. Amru lo Talmidav, Rabbi, minayin lach. When Rebbe Akiva starts teaching Davar Echad, his students said, where do you learn this? Amar lahen, halacha Moshe miSinai. He says, oh, this I learned, halacha Moshe miSinai. Nityashva da'ato. And then at that point, Moshe Rabbeinu feels better, and now his strength comes back, meaning his tashash kocho was only for a second, because he realized, now what does he realize? And what is this Davar Echad? What's going on over here? So there's different approaches to this. One approach says that Moshe wasn't there yet, but when he hears Rebbe Akiva telling his students, oh, this all comes from Moshe, Moshe recognizes he's going to get there. If this is Moshe Rabbeinu's last day of his life, by the end of this Gemara, he is going to get there. But we have to get to the end of the Gemara. He has to learn one more deeper lesson. He has to learn a lesson that applies to the later generations. Okay, so when it says that Rebbe Akiva came to Davar Echad, what is the Davar Echad? What is Echad all about? So many people say that Davar Echad Echad is a hint to Rebbe Akiva's final drasha, where he's going to say, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. When the Romans are torturing him, coming off his basar, coming off his flesh, his soul is going to leave him with the word Echad. This is the final drasha of Moshe of Rabbi Akiva dying al Kiddush Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu asked Hashem. He went back. Chazar. When he amar lefanav, Ribono shel olam, yesh lecha adam kazeh. This is such a great man. V'ata noten haTorah al yadi. Why are you giving the Torah to me? Amar la, says God. Shtok kach alav b'machshava. Be silent, Moshe Rabbeinu. This was my original. Kach alav b'machshava lefanai. This was my original machshava. Amar lefanav Ribono shel olam. Itani Torah. God, you showed me His Torah. Hareini scharo. Show me what is his reward. Well, someone as great as Rebbe Akiva should have such great reward. Amar lo, chazor lachorecha, chazar lachorav. V'ash shoklin besaro b'makolin. He saw that Rebbe Akiva's flesh, his basar, was being sold in the shuk. Amar lefanav Ribono shel olam, zo Torah v'zo schara. Hashem, this is the Torah, this is the Sachar. Amar le shtok. Kach alav machshava lefanai. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, yes, this is my original machshava. Moshe, you could only see Achorai. You only see, Chazal tells, the back of my tefillin. When Moshe asked to see a bigger revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he wanted to see the lifnei of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem says, no, only the back of the tefillin. But Chazal tell us, Rebbe Akiva saw Kol Yakar. He saw the front of Hashem's tefillin. So the question is, why and how? Now, most Mefarshim learn in this Gemara, what is this machshava lefanai? What is Hashem telling him? Hashem is actually telling him the original plan of the world, that the machshava lefanai, that's how Hashem wanted to create the world. That's the Bereshit bara Elokim, the famous Dvar Torah, that originally Hashem wanted to create the world with strict justice, with deen, but then he saw the people weren't going to make it, and therefore Hashem changed it, and he made rachamim in the world, and that's why it says Hashem Elokim created the world. Yud Kei Vav Kei is brought in over here, but that machshava still applies to the tzaddikim. That still applies to the Rebbe Akivas. Now, the Maharal, in his second approach to this Gemara in his Tiferet Yisrael, he writes that the crowns of the letters correspond to the loftiest Torah, and it's only available to somebody who separates from Olam Haze. He says, you know why Rebbe Akiva understood the crowns, but Moshe couldn't? Because Rebbe Akiva, and Kol Chaverav, he writes, all of his friends, all of the Asara Harogei Malchut, the 10 martyrs, why were they zocheh to it? Because Rebbe Akiva was zocheh to leave Olam Haze, to remove himself from Olam Haze. When his flesh was being combed off by the Romans, that suffering, that Yisurin, that was his tickets to the crowns. And that's why it says in the Midrash that his friends saw things. They had Giluim that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have, because they were able to remove themselves, or they were forced to remove themselves from Olam Hazeh. Moshe is being taught that Dafka, the lowest point, the Choshech, the Yisurim, the pain, the suffering, that's the ticket to the Sodot. And that's what the lowest generations are going to have, and what they're going to have to go through and deal with. And that's going to bring them all the way up. Now, the Leshem writes, why did Moshe ask to see Hashem's greater self, the greater revelation, only after Matan Torah, only after, the ego? What took place? I would have said it's after the ego. So once you have the Teshuvah of the ego, when you bring up Teshuvah, that raises you to an even higher place. But the Leshem says, no, he has a different reason. He says Moshe had just gone 40 days without food and water. He was less physical. So when you're less physical, you have less Olam Hazeh. It's like what the Maharal is saying. When you're separate from Olam Hazeh, you can be zochet to greater revelations. But ultimately, Moshe was elevated. Moshe was considered to be, by the Midrash, at the Elyonim, where he was half Elyon, half Tachton. He's half heavens, half earth. But he's still half earth. Moshe Rabbeinu right now is about to ascend his final journey up to Olam Haba. He has to learn the lessons to get to Olam Haba, and part of that is removing yourself from Olam Hazeh. But until this point, says the Maharal, it wasn't a chisaron in Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe needs to be in Olam Hazeh. It's his job to bring the Torah down to the Jewish people. It's his about to fight for the Jewish people. Lech, red. You got to be down with these people. Moshe Rabbeinu is not going to leave Olam Hazeh. So therefore, it's not a chisaron that he can't get to those tagin, because you can only get to those tagin once you leave. Once there's a shvira. Once the neshama is beginning to leave. And it appears that's what is happening now in our parasha. Now when the light of Moshe Rabbeinu is beginning to wane, and they say that when the light wanes, now you can see the tagin. Now you could see the pratim, you can see the details. When there was so much light, it was blinding, you couldn't see the details. Rebbe Akiva, who was always in that dark, was always down below, he always saw the pratim. He was known as an Adam Prati. That's the first approach in the Maharal, that it's the Prati versus the Klali. Moshe Rabbeinu was always the Klali, representing everybody. But right now, as he's dying, he's now beginning to hold himself back a little bit more, and he's beginning to see the pratim. But in seeing those pratim, that's going to connect him to these last generations where we're all about the pratim, we're all about the individuals, we're all about the choshech, we're all about the darkness. If we go back to that Gemara in Menachot, to go back to our Gemara, so the story of Rebbe Akiva and the Tagin is actually a side discussion in a bigger discussion about how a Sofer writes the Sefer Torah. Which letters get the crowns, which ones don't. Says the Gemara, Amar Rava, Shiva otiyot tzrichot shlosha Zionin. There are 7 letters that need to have crowns on them, that have 3 little crowns on them. Ve'eluhen, Shatnez, Ges, letters Shin, Ayin, Tet, Nun, Zayin, Gimel, and Sadi. Those 7 letters are the letters that they get the crowns. Amar Rav Asher, the Gemara goes on, Chazina lehu lesafre davkane. He says, I saw these davkanik sofrim. They knew what they were doing, these exacting sofrim, the Beit Rav, the house of Rav, the Beit Drash of Rav, dechatri lehu legage dechet. That they would make like this kind of like a hump, or this kind of like a stick that would come out of the chet. Machlokes in the Rishonim is in the middle, or is it on the side? But a part of the rooftop of the chet would go up. V'talu le lekare de hay, and they'd also do a second thing. They would make sure that the bottom leg of the hay was down below enough so that the hay wouldn't attach to the top. So what in the world is this talking about? The chet goes up, the bottom of the hay has a space. What are we talking about over here? Says the Gemara, klomar, what does it mean that the roof of the het is going up? Klomar, that it all connects back up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Romosh Olam, it all goes back up to the top, and it's all holding up, that everything in the letter het is really coming from up above. What does the letter chet symbolize? Chet, on the simple level, chet sounds like chet. I know it's missing the aleph, but we know in Rosh Hashanah we didn't eat egozim because it's missing the aleph, the gematria of chet being egoz. But the chet symbolizes, in a certain sense, sin. It also symbolizes choshech, meaning deep down we have to understand that even the darkness, the yisurin that comes from Moshe Olam, even that comes from Hashem. Meaning our Gemara is direct continuation of the story of Rebbe Akiva. We're talking about the tagin and the letters. Those tagin are supposed to hint to you that the tag on the chet, whether it's the middle, whether it's the side, whatever the Rishonim say, but we have ourselves, it's coming from the Moshe Olam, even the choshech, even the darkness. The Pri Tzadik tells us when the first time we find the letter ot chet, the letter chet in the Torah, we find it by choshech. He says, upam rishona sheuzkar ot chet, and then we find the letter chet again before speaking about the creation of light. When we speak about Hashem's spirit is merachefet, we have the letter chet there twice to tell us that the choshech, where does it come from? It comes from Chai, it comes from Moshe Olam, it comes from up above. That's the lesson Moshe is trying to learn from Rabbi Akiva, that all the suffering, shtoch, kach alav machshar lefanai, this is part of my bigger plan, this is part of my deeper plan. Says the Shulchan and Orach Chaim, Siman Samech Aleph, Saif Vav, we find this in the Maharsha as well, tzarich le'arich bechet shel echad. When we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, when we get to the echad, we have to make the echad sound longer, we have to ba'arich in the letter chet, k'tei sheyamlich HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'shamayim va'aretz, in order to make Hashem king above and below. We know the Chazal tell us there are 7 rakiyas, there are 7 firmaments, or 7 heavens basically, and the earth down below, that's 8. We're extending the chet so that we bring HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we understand that Hashem is melech over everything. That's also why we've been saying in our tefillot a lot of Ya'aleh v'yavoz, Ya'aleh v'yavov v'yagiv, right? So we have 8 languages to bring ourselves all the way up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's hinted to in the, says the Shulchan Aruch, in this chatotrot, in this little stick that comes up from the letter chet. He's learning from the emtza of the letter chet. He's learning according to that approach that the chet is being lifted up. It's letting us know the 8. It's letting us know the choshech. It all comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He says vayirich badal as well. Also make the dal a little bit longer because you have to realize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is yachid b'olamah Moshe b'dal ruchot, that Hashem is in control of everything. So from all the way up above, all the directions down below, all the cube of this world, the 3-dimensional world, going up, going sideways, going everywhere, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the melech over all of it. I heard from one of my friends, Rabbi Kleinman, he writes down on his notes in this Gemara that Moshe is sitting in the 8th row. Why is he sitting in the 8th row? Because the 8 is the letter Chet. He's learning the Torah of the Choshech, the suffering, the difficulty that Rabbi Akiva's life represents, but really it comes Moshe Olam. It comes from up above. It comes from the Tagin. It comes from the crowns. It's going to get you up to the crowns. That's the lesson Moshe Rabbeinu needs to know. He has to understand what's Choshech really all about. So that's why he's in row number 8. It also explains, I think we can also explain now the other approach. The other approach says, the other gear says 18. Row 18, what's 18? 18 is Chai. Again, we have this concept, the Chai B'Ro Moshe Olam, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Chai. He's bringing the Chaim, it's the Chet and the Yud. The Het symbolizing the Choshech, the Yud symbolizing Olam Haba, which our Gemara goes on to speak about. The Olam Haba was created with the letter Yud. Olam Haze was created with the letter Hey. When Rebbe Akiva gets to Davar Echad, he gets to the Echad of the Shema, the extension of the Chet. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu is being taught. That's your ticket to the Tagin. That's the roof on top of the Chet. The Gemara starts with the letter Chet and then it removes to the letter Hey. Now, why the letter Hey? It says, oh, hey, the bottom can't reach the top. Well, it says the Maharsha, the letter Kuf as well could have been talked about right now because Kuf also very similar. You have to make sure the long line doesn't go up on top. Why are we talking about the letter Hey right now? Explains the Maharsha, explains also, we said this in the past, in the Abridged Shalom, the letter Hey, the letter Chet, we can add the letter Bet, as we see in the Chidah and the Abridged Shalom. These letters correspond to the creation of the world. Originally, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Bereshit, he wants to create the world with the letter Bet, or maybe with the letter Het. What is a Het? A Het is a Bet on its side, or a Bet is a Het on its side. But originally, the world was supposed to be these three walls, with one exit down below. What's the exit down below? So our Gemara explains with the letter Hey that the exit down below is our free will, our ability to choose, our ability to leave, to sin and go into the darkness, to go out into this Olam Gashmi. The Gemara continues to say, but then HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a hole on top. Why? Because if somebody sins, then he can come up through that hole up on top, which is beautiful. Because originally, if the Bereshit originally was a Bet, or originally it was a Het, same shape. But originally the world was supposed to be Din. There was one way in, one way out. But then HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, no. I got to bring Rachamim into the world. I got to make space for Teshuvah. And then the Gemara actually goes on to say, why don't we just come up from the bottom? Which I actually think that Acher maybe is supposed to be coming up from the bottom, because he is that tzaddik who should be judged on the level of the deen. Because he said it would be too difficult. If we try to go down from the bottom, we wouldn't make it. We need a small opening on top, and from that opening, that's going to make us in. I saw brought down in the Al-Shikh, he says that the big opening on the bottom of Olam Haze symbolizes all the luxuries of this world, all the ta'avot of Olam Haze. But ultimately Hashem made a smaller hole up on top. What's the smaller hole on top? That's meaning Olam Haze is made smaller. It's now a world of yisurim, of afflictions. When a person's in pain, there's a lot less desire for Olam Haze. Who can care less about that vacation if a person is in pain? So Hashem brings a little bit of yisurim, makes Olam Haze a little bit smaller, but then you have your ticket back in. You have your ticket to get back into the letter, back into a HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the koch of teshuvah. That's the koch of that spot on top. Says the Imrei Emet, if we take our 10 days right now of Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, we do it right, we're going to be zocheh. We do a proper teshuvah, we come back up in, we'll be zocheh to the letter Hey. The letter Hey is the sukkah, the two walls, and the tefach. It's the letter Hey. The Maharal in Netiva Tshuva Perek Dalet, he writes the tag on the Hey. If you're going to learn that, if you're going to learn that this little stick at the end is really referring to the tag on the left top of the letter Hey. Well, that top little tag, that top little keter, that's right next to that hole. Meaning right under the keter is the hole. Meaning the person who's the Baal Tshuva who comes in through that hole, he's going to be zocher to the keter. That's the idea that the Shar Nun belongs to the Baal Tshuva. But I heard from my friend Rabbi Kleinman, he writes, but it says that the Hey is only domeh to an achsadra. It's only similar to this gateway opening. He said it's only domeh because really, we think we make choices. What is man? Man is desire to make choices. I heard once from Rav Berkowitz that he says that what is free will? It's our ability to want to choose, but to actually actualize our choice, to actually sin, to actually bring choshech into this world, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to give us the ability to do, make our body work properly, to be able to get out of bed, to go and do whatever we want to do, to go and sin. Meaning it takes a lot of siyat dishmaya to sin as well. What is man? Man is only his ratzon, it's desire to do something, but to actualize it, so really, says Rav Kleinman, the choshech itself, when Hashem lets us sin, lets the darkness come into this world, that is also that really is the way the world is. Meaning, forget the Hey, forget the opening on top. Everything is Rumo Shel Olam. Everything really is coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because the Choshech itself that Hashem allows exist also comes from Rumo Shel Olam. That's also the Gag that's being lifted up above to tell us that's from Hashem as well. We're getting closer. The Shabbat Shuvah coming up. We're getting closer to Yom Kippur, and we're going to close off the Sfaradim. Close off with the piyut before Ne'ilah. El Nora Alila. El Nora Alila. El Nora Alila means Hashem. Your actions are so great. They're so awesome. But all of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's actions, even the events that look like us to choshech, look like a bit of a setup, all of the stuff that Hashem lets us do, even all the sins Hashem, it's all part of a greater plan. But again, we live in the world of the Hey. We see our perceived picture is that we have free will. We have to make choices, and we got to do teshuvah. So what does the Kadosh Baruch Hu do? He opens up for us a little petach on top. He turns the bet, he turns the letter chet into a letter Hey. He makes a space for us to come back up from up above. He opens up the petach for rachamim. El nora alila, hamtzi lanu mechila, b'sha'at ne'ilah. Make for us a place, make for us a way to come in. Moshe Rabbeinu's life is ending in this final Vayelech. But we look at his whole life. It's there's a bunch of ups and downs. First, he goes up to the Shemaim to get the first luchot. But then we sin, he has to come down. Hashem says, Lech Red, you got to go down. You can't stay on the 50th level anymore. You got to make yourself lower. Then he goes back up with the tshuva of the Jewish people. And now he's zochet to even greater heights. He comes down with the second luchot, which turns him into a walking cloth. So on the one hand, it's a little bit lower. We need an oral Torah. On the other hand, we have a glow right now. But he asked to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu's front. Hashem says, no, you can't live and see that. But now at the end of his life, Hashem is beginning to close up his Torah. Darkness. He's not seeing as much anymore. Things aren't as clear. He's being uplifted into Rebbe Akiva's Beit Midrash to understand the Torah of suffering, the Torah of Teshuvah, of the Bali Teshuvah. But he's recognizing that when you do this, you're going to get to the deepest secrets. So the last letters of the Torah that Moshe is writing, the last bit of shefa he's trying to build, the chiyut, the life force he's trying to bring in for the future generations, it's for us, the ikvah de Mashiach, the lowest generations. But in order to do that, he has to grasp the lessons of the future, grasp the lessons of the suffering of the future, of the 8th row in Rebbe Akiva's shiur, of the letter chet, of the choshech, of the echad, the dying on the echad, of the Shema Yisrael, the oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of Hashem being everywhere. But ultimately, he's going to learn this lesson. And he's going to learn this lesson by hiding some of his light, as Moshe Wolfson said, by holding himself, by being mitzamtzim himself. And when he does that, he's going to be able to elevate himself above this Olam Haze, so that he too can reach in his Ne'ilah, in his Yom Adin Gadol, he'll be able to get up to Har Nevo, the Nun Bo, to make it to the top at the very end of his life. Shabbat Shalom.